My heart started pounding and I thought I was having a heart attack.
I just found myself constantly worrying. I just couldn't stop.
Every time I left the house, I had to lock the door 3 times. Not 4, not 2, but 3.
My hands were shaking, and I was sure that people were looking at me and watching my hands.
I had these horrible flashbacks where I would relive the moment that I was assaulted. They would come out of nowhere, and I'd break out in a cold sweat.
These college students didn't know it then, but they were each experiencing the symptoms of an anxiety disorder. There are actually 5 different kinds: panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, social phobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes the symptoms of these disorders are often mistaken for normal reactions to the new pressures of college life. This year, 23 million Americans will suffer from one of these anxiety disorders. They're the most common mental illness in the country, and they can attack anyone at any time. And I should know. Hi, my name is Mark Summers, and perhaps you've seen me hosting Double Dare on Nickelodeon. Hosting the show was fun, but each day was extremely challenging. I have a form of anxiety disorder called obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD is all about compulsive rituals, and mine were about cleanliness and making things symmetrical. I would take showers after each show. I would shower at the studio and then go back to the hotel and shower again. I just wanted to get clean. At home, I would spend hours arranging my possessions in particular order, like making sure the hangers in my closet were approximately 2 inches apart. My OCD was about cleanliness and order, but there are other OCD symptoms too, like constant checking or even hoarding.
I was a freshman in college when it first started happening. I began checking and rechecking everything. I don't know why. If I was going out of my apartment, I had to check that the gas was off. But not just once. I had to check it 5 times exactly. Not 6, not 4. And then I had to lock and unlock the door 3 times. 3 times exactly. I knew it was weird, but I just couldn't stop myself. After a while, my roommates would ask me to go out somewhere with them, and I'd pretend that I was just too busy to go. I felt so alone and ashamed. I couldn't tell anybody, and I couldn't stop.
Obsessive-compulsive disorder takes the form of repeated unwanted thoughts or compulsive behaviors that seem impossible to stop or control. But at least these symptoms are very specific. With generalized anxiety disorder, the worry is constant and never-ending.
When I was actually a junior in college, my worrying really started getting out of control. And I mean, I guess it was natural because I always was kind of a worrier, but this was scary because this was something just so totally different. I couldn't stop the feelings of persistent anxiety. I was worrying about my schoolwork even though I was getting straight A's. I worried about my health even though I was perfectly healthy. My friends started to tease me and call me worrywart. And then I started drinking to try to calm myself down, and that kind of worked, but then I started worrying that I was going to become an alcoholic.
Reaching for alcohol is a common mistake often made by young people attempting to cope with their anxiety. Nurse practitioner Margaret Gaverno frequently speaks to students about anxiety disorders and the dangers of self-medicating.
Very often, people who are experiencing anxiety are self-medicating through the use of alcohol or other substances because they don't understand what's happening to them, and they're trying desperately to regain the feelings that they once had. and to feel the way they used to feel. They don't realize they have a treatable illness that can be treated relatively quickly and effectively.
Just like OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder can also be destructive. The attacks seem to come out of nowhere.
Well, I was on the road. I'm in a rap band called the Lords of Brooklyn, and we were actually on tour. And we pulled over to get something to eat. And I was sitting there ready to order, and then all of a sudden I felt this overwhelming wave come through, and panic set in. And I started getting heart palpitations. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was having a heart attack. I went to the bathroom, splashed some water in my face, but it wasn't going away. I still managed to get on stage and do the show. And after the show, I ended up collapsing and vomiting. So they rushed me to the hospital. As I got to the hospital, they diagnosed me with dehydration, maybe fatigue. Definitely thought maybe that could be it, but it's the dizziness, the pain, it was all still there. So I knew something else was wrong. Basically, when I got back home, I was bedridden for a few months, not knowing what was wrong with me. I must have sought out 100 different doctors, MRIs, CAT scans, because I thought, there was something definitely serious.
People who have anxiety disorders often have the accompanying depression. That has to do with the uncomfortable feelings people have and the fact that they often worry about when these feelings are coming back and what this means. The person starts to feel like they're not themselves anymore and they're losing touch with their world, their reality. So this is something that is seen with anxiety. And very often it can make the diagnosis a little bit tricky.
Everyone gets depressed now and then, and it's a natural thing that you don't want to be around a lot of people when you're feeling down. But if you find yourself constantly avoiding people or social situations because it causes you anxiety, it could be a sign of social phobia.
I stayed home a lot. I didn't go out to play too many sports with the other kids because that really did intimidate me. Well, when I would go to a party, I would first feel intimidated to enter the door. And then from that point, I would find my own space, maybe at the back of the room, and be by myself. I was too intimidated to ask or even begin a conversation with a person. So I just sort of kept to myself. My hands would be very sweaty. My heart would palpitate, and I would have these feelings of unreality, and I would be very afraid of being criticized and judged by that person. So I started to elicit all these major fear responses from my body. It was very, very intimidating. It's a major fear that you just cannot control.
No one knows exactly what triggers most anxiety disorders, but with post-traumatic stress disorder, there's usually a traumatic event that brings it on, like an accident, maybe a sexual assault, or perhaps just witnessing a crime.
I was, this is hard. I was assaulted about 3 years ago by somebody I knew, or at least somebody I thought I knew. He didn't, I fought him off and everything, and I thought it was fine. I did everything you're supposed to do. I went to counseling. I didn't let it interfere with my relationship with my boyfriend. But then about a year ago, I started having these dreams about it. I guess you call them flashbacks. They were so vivid. Every time I went to sleep, I would just relive the moment over and over again. I felt everything, the fear, the helplessness. It got to the point where I was afraid to sleep.
What everyone seems to have in common here is they felt alone. I can tell you how I felt. I thought I was the only one in the world who had this thing, and I thought I could never tell anybody what I was going through. Fortunately for me, while I was hosting a show called Biggers and Summers on Lifetime, the featured guest was a doctor who was an expert on OCD. Last night, as I was going through notes, I couldn't read the material. I couldn't do it because it brought so many things to the surface. And we talked before the show about OCD, and this is something that I have. To what extent, I'm not sure. That was the very first time I realized that I had a treatable illness.
I actually heard on the radio, or my wife heard on the radio, that they were having a national anxiety screening day. After spending a ton of money on different doctors, I would have tried anything. They asked me a bunch of questions, and if you had these symptoms, which it was like 50 symptoms, and I had probably 49 of them, you know, they said, well, what you experience is common. A lot of people experience it. And actually, when I showed up to these meetings, I seen firemen there, and construction workers, and older women, and younger, you know, it was relieving to see that, you know, I wasn't, you know, making this stuff up, you know, because the pain was intense. You know, the not feeling normal was overwhelming. So, you know, it felt good right there. It was a sign of relief just by stepping in the door.
My anxiety became so intense and chronic that I had to drop out of school. And I just went into a real depression. And my family finally told me that I had to go to a therapist. And she was the one who said that what I had was generalized anxiety disorder, which is an actual illness. And it helped so much just knowing that there was a name to it, that I wasn't alone in this.
So if it turns out that I have an anxiety disorder, does that mean that I messed up for life?
No, not at all. As a result of daily scientific advances and progress that we're making in research, we realize that treatment is available through cognitive therapy or medication or a combination of both. And there is a 90% success rate. Most of the medications that are prescribed for anxiety disorders are not addicting medications. And none of the medications that are prescribed change personalities. And as a result of being treated properly, their personalities are able to bloom, the person is able to live a healthy, satisfactory life.
So you might be thinking, I really have an anxiety disorder. But how do I know for sure?
Because I know I feel stressed sometimes because of school or whatever, but I don't, like, how do you know when you've hit that point that you should go seek help?
When a person finds that they can no longer control their stress, when they actually feel that they're losing touch with the person they once were, that's when they really need to go. Step into the local healthcare center here on campus, then receive safe, speedy help.
I think it's hard for a guy to confess that he has a problem. But when you get help and you find out there's other people just like you know that, hey, this is definitely a problem and you're not the only one.
What's important to me is that through treatment, I learned to function with my disorder, and now life is so much more enjoyable. And you know, the same is true for a whole lot of other people.
Life is so much better now that I've gotten treatment, and I feel like I've got my OCD under control, and it feels really great.
I got results almost immediately with the medications and the cognitive behavioral therapy because they teach you coping skills that you use right away, and they work.
Things are looking up. I'm working on a new record, going back on the road. Just had a baby. Things are good.
Yeah, I'm back in school now, and it's hard not to feel like I lost 4 years of my life because all my friends have graduated. But what is great is that the treatment helped me get my worrying under control, and I feel like anything is possible for me now.
After I went back into therapy, I was able to address the fear and the helplessness that I had felt when it happened, and the flashbacks are gone now, and I'm really starting to be my old self again.
If you think you might have an anxiety disorder, you're not alone. And as you've seen, help is available. If you'd like more information on anxiety disorders, contact your college counseling center because a better life is waiting.